Yes, thank you, Malcolm, and members of RUSI. I'm not a good speaker, but I can talk to those who are paid to listen to me. So said Marshal of the Royal Air Force, Hugh Trenchard. Now, I realise that you haven't been paid to listen to me this afternoon, which makes me actually all the more grateful, maybe a little bit surprised to see so many of you here. He can't write, he can't speak, but he is a very great man. Incidentally, he is the RAF. So said Lawrence of Arabia about Trenchard. You know, whatever his communication skills, I think there is universal agreement that Trenchard was a great man. Known variously as father, architect, patron saint, prophet of the Royal Air Force, actually it's been a real pleasure to have this opportunity to look at the challenges of the next generation Air Force through the lens of Lord Trenchard. Now, this pleasure was not unadulterated, you will understand. As you know, there is always perhaps an element of threat and opportunity when it comes to public speaking. So I did approach this task with some care and consulted widely. The advice I received was probably split into two categories. The first group, let's call them the historians, Seb, who advised me to concentrate on the lessons from history, and when bringing it to the present day, I should avoid tenuous links to my entry or any particular hobby horse I may have. The members of the second category, let's call them the Twitterati. Well, they advised me not to spend too much time in the past, but to focus on the more interesting challenges of today and tomorrow. Well, I fear I may disappoint both the historians and the Twitterati, because my remarks reflect the advice of both groups and will be based on three themes. The first is what Trenchard described as the extreme importance of training. Critical to this were the three pillars of the Cranwell Cadets, the Trenchard Brats, and the Staff College. The enduring importance of training and education is why the legacy of RAF 100, our centennial celebrations, will include a number of new and exciting training and education initiatives brigaded under the banner of what we have called, appropriately, the Trenchard Group. My second theme will be affordability. For many, the words efficiency and economy belong to the lexicon of the 21st century accountant. But it is interesting to examine Trenchard's view on this. Throughout his writing and his speeches, he consistently referred to the need for both efficiency and economy in a way that is absolutely relevant to the challenges we have today of delivering an affordable next-generation Air Force. Lastly, Trenchard recognised that the formation of the Royal Air Force offered new ways in employing force. Today, I will argue, we also need new ways if we are to realise the ambition and the opportunity that sits within the next-generation Air Force. The strapline for RAF 100 is commemorate, celebrate, inspire. But I think like any notable birthday or anniversary, our centenary also provides us with an opportunity to reflect, but also to reimagine what the future RAF or the next generation Air Force should be. The Air Force Board view on this is laid out in our strategy that was published earlier this year. And the aiming point of this strategy is an Air Force, part of Joint Force 2025, and with the ambition of undertaking the most difficult missions across the spectrum of potential conflict alongside NATO and our allies. Now, the more I researched Trenchard, I do have to say a particular thanks to Seb Cox there, and indeed the RAF Museum and RAF Cranwell for helping me with this research. But the more I read his archives, the more I realised that Trenchard's challenges absolutely resonated with those faced by the Air Force Board today. But first, some context to Trenchard's challenge. His landmark 1990 memorandum was published just months after the announcement of Lloyd George's 10-year rule, which instructed the armed services to plan on the assumption that they would not face a major conflict for 10 years. This meant for Trenchard that the RAF that was established during the Great War would not be suitable or sustainable in the post-war era. He characterised the RAF's challenge thus: the necessities of war created it in a night, but the economies of peace have to a large extent caused it to wither in a day. And we are now faced with the necessity of replacing it with a plant of deeper root. Trenchard's objective was to plant the seeds of an organisation that would sustain a small front line, but then also provide the foundations for the expansion of a much larger force. And in overcoming this challenge, he famously said, "I have laid the foundations for a castle. If nobody builds anything bigger than a cottage on it, then it will at least be a very good cottage." So Trenchard's objectives, his approach, were based on three themes. First, to keep the RAF independent. Second, to raise the standards of efficiency and training. And lastly, to foster and develop an RAF spirit. Now, I will not consider the need to protect an independent Air Force. Whilst it was a significant threat for Trenchard, and it does make for some interesting study, today it is a redundant topic of discussion in which only those many years distant from defence occasionally indulge. It's redundant because the RAF has a well-earned reputation for delivering relevant air power. Working independently or alongside other services, we offer political choice, global agility, and value for money. I can tell you, as the man responsible for the RAF frontline, that the RAF continues to make an operational contribution that is significant, respected, and valued. Secretary of State said recently, "The RAF is busier today than it has been for over 25 years." And his comments were made before the recent hurricanes in the Caribbean, where, yet again, the responsiveness of the RAF was in evidence with Voyagers, C-17s, A400Ms, rapidly deploying men and materiel, including the RAF Puma and Chinook helicopters, a distance of over 4,000 miles, some 700 miles further than it is to Kabul. Now, it's at this point, it's very tempting for me to bridge into the inbox. But I'm going to avoid that temptation, and we'll leave current operations to questions if you so wish. But I will conclude this section by observing that those who understand the nature of operations and the RAF's diverse and significant contribution to them refer to the 100-year celebration, not experiment. In building the Air Force, Trenchard highlighted the extreme importance of training. Indeed, he said that the whole future of the Royal Air Force depended on the training of its officers and men, arguing that the Cadet College at Cranwell and the School of Technical Training at Halton would be the making or marring of the future of the Air Force. He recognised that the RAF was a technical service in need of pilots and engineers, and he knew from the Great War it was often the lack of engineers that limited operations and the lack of technical know-how that caused accidents. Churchill agreed. He agreed that need for technical skills, commenting that the complications of the Air Force, the many sciences which united the air service, the varied arts and crafts, and the varied forms in which they had to be acquired, require a greater ability and a greater knowledge. At the time, all officers were pilots. And in my research, I did come across a rather interesting, and it is of its time, RAF Cranwell magazine, which said, "An officer who could not fly was useless to the Air Force." Now, if all officers had to be pilots today, I suggest that the Royal Air Force presence in the building next door would be much reduced. Talking of which, when presenting this lecture 2 years ago, Air Chief Marshal Stuart for the second time, argued convincingly that Trenchard's approach to apprentice training merited the accolade of social visionary. In 1918, free education stopped at 14, and most apprenticeships had to be paid for. The RAF apprentice scheme thus proved to be attractive and competitive, with up to 20 applications for each apprenticeship. The nation benefited because the system was a virtual extension of state education, and the RAF benefited because it was cheaper to recruit the boys than compete with civilian employers who paid higher wages for qualified apprentices. And for the more ambitious and capable apprentices like Sir Frank Whittle, no less, there was the opportunity to become Cranwell cadets, underlining the RAF's belief in and contribution to social mobility. The schools also provided the opportunity to instill and foster that RAF spirit that Trenchard considered to be so important to the independent identity of the new air service. Today, we continue to rely on that same spirit and technical skills of our people. But we recognise that the national skills shortage relating to science, technology, engineering and mathematics, STEM, and natural philosophy, means the recruitment, bit of tautology, the recruitment market is going to become increasingly competitive. And this is part of the reason that we have decided that the RAF 100 legacy will focus on training and education and sit under, as I said, the banner of the Trenchard Group. It is a group inspired by Lord Trenchard and his vision and aims to engage and encourage the next generation of the Air Force. The Trenchard Group has three main elements: ideas, scholarships and pathways. It involves quite a diverse array of initiatives designed to connect the young and ignite interest and excitement in the RAF, aviation and the STEM subjects. Through this group, we will transform our approach to training and education for the good of the nation, as well as the RAF working closely with industry to promote interesting careers across air, space and the cyber sectors. And by doing so, we also aim to grow a more diverse workforce, and one that better reflects the society from which we are drawn and which we protect. Under the heading of pathways, we will establish a number of academies, including the Aaron Aerospace Academy and the Whittle Engineering Academy. Both are exciting new initiatives being developed together with industrial partners. The Air Cadets, as you know, are an exceptional group. And the Aaron Aerospace Academy are at RAF Silverstone, delivered in collaboration with the Aviation Skills Partnership, will provide the Air Cadets, alongside other 16 to 20-year-olds, with a national hub to develop their technical skills and understanding of a range of aerospace and cyber subjects. Through the Whittle Engineering Academy, we will develop Cosford as our centre for STEM, delivering world-class engineering training to our people and to international and industrial partners. The initial training of both airmen and officers continues to be critical to our success. And through Programme Portal, we will revitalise and expand the facilities at RAF Cranwell, establishing it as the single point of entry for all airmen and officers to the Royal Air Force, at the Royal Air Force's spiritual home, delivering training fit for the next generation Air Force. These and many other activities sit within the Trenchard Group, and together will deliver an RAF 100 legacy of what we hope will be a transformed and world-class training and education system that truly inspires the next generation. Ambition and affordability are two sides of the same capability coin. Post the 2015 SDSR, the government announced an ambitious future for the RAF. Our challenge today is to turn that ambition into affordable and deliverable plan. To those who thought efficiency and economy was not the language of battle-hardened warfighters, Trenchard made his views absolutely clear in a speech to the RAF Staff College. No officer who aspires to be in a high position on staff or in command can exercise to the full his powers and capabilities if he does not study economy and the power of money to provide what is required. Trenchard believed that delivering efficiency and economy was not just the business of those in higher headquarters, and that to avoid the Geddes Acts, there was a need to promote a culture at all levels in the RAF that sought a maximum of efficiency at a minimum of cost. He said to his squadron commanders, "Your pilots may fly in better formation than anyone else's pilots, but ask yourself, are you running them at less cost than anybody else?" And today a good example of it could be the Typhoon Total Availability Enterprise Agreement, which hopefully will see over £500 million being reinvested in upgrading the Typhoon's capabilities through efficiencies delivered in the Typhoon support and maintenance activity. Perhaps this shows that under the Levine model, we do have both the authority and the opportunity to deliver and benefit from greater efficiency. Also, in what might be considered foreshadowing of what today is known in the vernacular as cross-DLOD trading, Trenchard highlighted the need to fund a significant infrastructure spend by, and I quote, exercising rigid economy over personnel and technical equipment in order to free up as large as possible of the total sum provided towards the provision of barracks. It was this approach that made the plans for Cranwell, Halton and Andover affordable and deliverable, an approach that is needed today if we are to ensure the ambitious plans that we have for the next generation Air Force are both realistic and affordable. Trenchard's words then resonate today. You should at all times apply your thoughts and brains to the expansion of materiel and personnel without increasing either. Let me now expand on what we mean by next generation Air Force, and this was an interesting conversation. The strategy was written by the Air Force Board. We have our fingerprints on it. And we deliberately avoid referring to the fifth generation Air Force to emphasise that our ambition was beyond that of simply operating a fifth generation aircraft. Also, by using the term next generation, what we wanted to reinforce was the sense that we aspired to a future state that was different to the current state. And as the strategy says, our next generation Royal Air Force will fly and fight in an environment that's much more contested by agile and capable enemies who will be more able than those we have seen for a generation and will challenge our strengths and exploit our vulnerabilities. Our aircrafts and our systems must, therefore, be seamlessly integrated to allow that swift transfer and exploitation of information, rapid decision-making and timely delivery of effects. In sum, the next generation Air Force genuinely is about information, integration, innovation enabled by imaginative and motivated people. Now, whilst we avoided using the term fifth generation Air Force, one should be in no doubt that the fifth generation technology of the F-35 will herald a step change in the potency and the utility of the Air Force. In the same year that we celebrate our 100th anniversary, we will welcome back to the RAS frontline 617 Squadron, the Dam Busters. Trenchard emphasised the importance of the squadron, the RAF's fighting unit, as a way of fostering that RAF spirit. The feats of Guy Gibson and 617 Squadron in the Second World War not only epitomise that fighting spirit, but they also support Trenchard's view of the aircraft as an inherently offensive weapon. Armed with the F-35, 617 Squadron will be ready to operate in the most contested of battle space. But the old language of fighters, bombers, control needs to change. The F-35 defies use of such labels because simultaneously it can fight, it can bomb, control, deliver understanding and threaten even the most capable foe. it can influence his cost-benefit calculus by holding at risk that which he values most, whether being flown from ship or from shore. But F-35 and the next generation Air Force needs to be more than a change of lexicon. We also need to transform our thinking and the way we train and prepare for operations. Today's Air Force is more combat experienced than it has been for generations. And whilst this is a strong starting point for us, there is a danger that our excellence at the tactical level blinds us to the shortfalls at the operational level. As the Chief of the Air Staff said last year, we need an Air Force which matches outstanding tactical delivery of air power, with its thinking lifted also to the operational level, and with command and control capabilities developed accordingly. This need to lift our thinking to the operational level is one of the objectives of the RAF's Thinking to Win programme. We want to genuinely create an environment where innovation is ingrained, that our thinking at the operational and the strategic level is transformed, and we better understand and promote air power. In short, the aim is to sharpen our intellectual edge and to reinvigorate the conceptual component of fighting power. This will enable us to integrate better with other domains such as space, cyber, and subsurface. It will ensure we synchronise effectively our operations with other services and with the other levers of national power. In a mix of the old speak and the new speak, this is about network-enabled capabilities delivering a full-spectrum approach. The next generation Air Force will challenge a number of orthodoxies, not least that which draws a distinction between forces at home and those on deployment. We're already seeing that. There's a blurring of the terms home and away today. Just visit RAF Waddington. The Reaper crews operating from the cabins in Lincolnshire and indeed Nevada make a critical daily contribution to operations in both Iraq and Syria. Our other I-Star assets, the eyes and ears of the RAF, launch every day from RAF Waddington into Europe, providing invaluable insight and understanding for the UK, its allies and NATO. And while maintaining the integrity of United Kingdom's airspace will remain our primary role at home, we believe that new capabilities like Protector can play a role in homeland security, notwithstanding that there are cultural, legal, regulatory challenges that we will have to address. We continue to develop the National Air and Space Operations Centre at High Wycombe, from where we can command and control operations at home and and away, independently or in concert with other joint headquarters and allied partners, and as an alternative to or an augmentation of a deployed headquarters. This surely is the efficient and economic approach Trenchard would have encouraged, and one of the many opportunities offered in this information age. But we do still have some way to go to integrate, to exploit, to support, and to recognise people operating at distance from the battle space. So as well as developing how we think, we must also transform how the front line trains. Whilst my focus earlier was on the training and education of individuals, I believe that similar energy needs to be reinvested in transforming the way we train collectively. The Defence Operational Training capability for the air environment will deliver a step change in how we train, exercise and prepare. It will span the live, the virtual, the constructive environments, and it does offer economic and efficient training at home or when deployed, including on board the new Queen Elizabeth class carriers. We must also continue to exploit the synergies that exist in that potent F-35 Typhoon partnership. Our experience to date of the fusion of 4th and 5th generation capability has given us but a glimpse of the enormous potential that we think is available. This is potential we will continue to unlock nationally and along with our NATO partners. So critical to the next generation Air Force will be our ability to integrate with those at sea and on land, when in operations and, crucially, when training, in both the live and the virtual environments. And we must not fool ourselves that the kind of operations we have conducted together in the recent past will necessarily prepare us well for the potential operations of the future. As General Mattis said recently, when our soldiers hear the noise of aircraft, they no longer look upwards, assuming the jet aircraft to be friendly. This will not always be the case. And the air maritime seam is in particular need of attention. Unlike with the Army, recent operations have not provided the Air Force and the Navy with opportunities to operate together in any significant way. But the entry into service of both the F-35 and P-8 provides both the imperative and opportunity for us to address this shortfall. So, as we build towards the next generation Air Force, we would do well to remember Trenchard's challenge. The test of every fighting service is war. Its organisation, training, distribution, systems of command and administration must always be primarily governed by this consideration. At a time of significant operational tempo, we must not forget that challenge. That challenge posed by the Joint Force 2025 headmark, it's significant in terms of both ambition and affordability. But as it was 100 years ago, so it is today. The extreme importance of training endures, and the Trenchard Group promises to be an exciting and ambitious legacy of our centennial celebrations. And as we move into our second century, our ambition is to become an Air Force that has information at its lifeblood and has the people, the equipment, the doctrine to allow us to respond rapidly and decisively to changing threats across the spectrum of conflict. We will do this by focusing on our people, delivering on operations, and growing our front line. This is a formidable challenge, and one that will require us to think deeply, broadly, and differently. I'm grateful to you, Professor Chalmers, and to Rusi, genuinely, for this opportunity, not just to speak today, but enabling me to see for myself the evidence that Lord Trenchard generally was a social visionary. He was a great man, and a man to inspire the next generation Air Force. Thank you.